Welcome back, everybody. Today another non-scripted video, and today we're talking about a little thing that you might have heard. A very sad subject, actually. And yeah, all those infos, they come from a channel called The Pod, which is a podcast by two German guys, and apparently they have connections to the industry. So all the information that you hear right now is taken from their podcast. I will give you a link down in the description. And apparently, since November last year, the development studio of Piranha Bytes is affected by the closures at the hands of the Embracer Group. So that is the parent company of THQ Nordic. And this all happens because of cost-cutting measures. Apparently there was $1 billion or euro deal which wasn't established. So, yeah. They had to do something about that because they were already planning with that money. So, anonymous sources at Piranha Bytes confirmed it already. And it seems like the THQ Nordic branch, the German branch, fought for Piranha Bytes and settled an agreement that the developers can work short time and avoid the direct firing of the employees. And that might be because they wanted to give them time to pitch their studio for a takeover, to relocate the studio to a different group. And on top of that, we already knew that the government grants for ELEX had been terminated. If you're not aware of this, the government handed out some money for game development, and we got to know this, I think, back in the day of ELEX 1, which was good news back in the day, because government funding for games in Germany is, well, it's a novelty, I might say. And the Embracer Group is willing to let go of a potential ELEX 3 IP. So Piranha Bytes might work on that game because it's in the early stages of development, but under a new banner, right? So not Embracer anymore. If they're lucky, somebody else takes Piranha Bytes and then they can continue development of ELEX 3, maybe. Yeah, the ELEX IP, the franchise, is not very valuable, especially after the disastrous sequel, which was also affected by the release date. Back in the day when it was released, Elden Ring came out around the same time, so it was very, very unfortunate. But there is also other reasons, right? We were getting into that in a moment. But the Embracer Group also will allow them to continue to develop games under the name Piranha Bytes, so that is at least something, right? Then there is this little information about Björn Pankratz, who's like the head of Piranha Bytes and the main guy behind ELEX. And he already apparently left the studio in November last year. And the main reason is that he had differences with the team, actually. Björn Pankratz made it very clear that he did not intend to go back to the Gothic series. And it seems like the majority of the team wanted to do just that, getting back to this magnificent game of the olden days. But it seems that ELEX is Björn's pet child, so to speak. It's his favorite little baby, you know, and he was I think he was proud of it. And he didn't want to let go of the franchise so soon, right? It was always that Piranha Bytes worked on a trilogy of games. We see it with, or we saw it with Gothic, we saw it with Risen, and Elix was also planned to be a trilogy, and it just makes sense. But yeah, now we have this little situation at hand. Now that you're up to date, I think it's about time that I give you my 2 cents about the whole situation, how I feel about it. And yeah, let's just start with that. So in my last video, I started talking about Gothic 3, how I feel about it, why I don't want to include it anytime soon in my lore series, why I avoid the information, and I gave you a little perspective, how I view the game, how I look upon this, this mess, which was Gothic 3. And I think it fits perfectly right now to, well, ramble on a little bit about these things because of the situation at hand. I told you that I was very, well, demotivated playing Gothic 3, not just back in the day, but also very recently. I was always looking for something, but in the end I said, you know, they just missed the mark. I think the aspirations were way too high. They wanted a bigger world, a bigger story, bigger everything, but in the end it turned out to be just a very mediocre experience. I think the main problem of back in the day that they had these aspirations, I think they could have avoided that by doing, let's say, oh, the main game of Gothic 3 should be like focusing on Myrtana, and then you take time to develop, for example, a Varant expansion pack or a Nordmar expansion pack. But you craft the main experience in the line of Gothic 1 and 2, you know, you have a rich and detailed story, and then you add on these things later on. But it never happened. So we all know the reasons. I mean, I'm not really an expert on that, but as far as I remember, it was Joe Wood, the publisher, who urged them to put out the game, and they had to release it in this very unfinished state. Yes. And that was the beginning of their downfall. I mean, they most of the time had problems with the publisher, you know. I was talking about these kind of things in earlier videos when I was talking about cut content from Gothic 1, and Gothic 1 was also meant to be this juggernaut of a game, you know. It had a multiplayer function, and it was the story was way more detailed and all that kind of stuff, but in the end we got the game, and I think it worked. It worked. Obviously, I'm a little bit sad about the cut content, but I think it worked just how you can play it right now, you know. When you go on Steam, you download it. I think it's a neat experience. I mean, if you ask me about my opinion, I love the game. There's no question about it, but if I imagine the game being completed with all those things in mind, with the different locations that you could have gone to, for example, the Orc, the proper Orc city, for example, or the abandoned mine and all that kind of stuff, it would have been even more of a good game, even better, even more magnificent. But yeah, it is a fantastic game, and it was the start of a grand journey which dramatically fell off after Gothic 2 Night of the Raven. So, if we take a look at the story a little bit further, the next project they had in mind was Risen. If you ask the people, a majority will tell you, hey, Risen 1 was actually pretty good. Yes, I played it not that long ago. I bought it and I played it because the last time I played it, it was back in the day when it released. And I must say, you know, it's all right, but I was expecting more of a game by the developer Piranha Bytes, and that they had, time to learn, time to investigate what they did wrong, and also time to analyze, the problems they might have had in the past. But yeah, that was Risen 1. I'm not a big fan of it. Actually, I'm not a fan of it. I can see that it has some qualities, but I'm not too much interested in the whole lore of Risen. Besides, I never actually want to plan. I actually don't have the plans to go into the lore of Risen. Just that you know. And then Risen 2 came out, and then Risen 3 came out, and it fell off even more. To my understanding, it was after Risen 1 that very important people of the company left the development studio. For example, Mike Hoge, which is the face of the Nameless Hero. And obviously other developers as well. They then had been replaced with other people. And Risen 2 came to be, Risen 3 came to be. And then we had this longer dry period again. And then we had the news that they are working on a new IP. And obviously at the beginning, you're a little bit excited about it, but at the same time you look back at Risen and you're like, I don't know. It wasn't really, the cream. It wasn't really grabbing you, and the story didn't devour you. You weren't so much invested into it, but you still had this little glimmer of hope somewhere left, because these are the manufacturers, at least on paper, of those very, very spectacular games of the Gothic franchise. Well, then Elex comes along. Many people were conflicted in a way, because it was just such a huge mishmash of things, It was, here you have the Gothic aspect of the game, there's the Berserkers, and you can craft your weapons, you can forge them, and you can enhance them with magics and all that kind of stuff. And the Berserkers, they want to live, kind of in the past because of their strict rules and all that kind of stuff. Then you had obviously the very stereotypical faction of the Outlaws, which was very Mad Max style. It's basically the faction that you think about when you hear post-apocalypse. Then you also had the how are they called? Oh man, I forgot about that. Yeah, it's basically the swamp camp in the future. The religious zealots, the Kalan worshippers. Oh, I forgot how they are called. Oh my god. A rather cool faction, might I say. And the difference between the Berserkers and those guys was really, really fucking big, You had swords and crossbows, or bows, I'm sorry, against laser weapons and all that kind of shit. And at the beginning, I was asking myself, can this all together fit into one game? Does it make sense? And I was hopeful, and I think it kind of made sense. I had fun times playing Elex 1. When I began to analyze the game, I saw its weaknesses, definitely, but at the same time I could see a lot room for improvement, right? So when I started this channel, I actually wanted to, engage more with Elex. Not necessarily the lore, but, maybe making a playthrough or whatever, because of things to come, because of Elex 2, which was an idea that was still far off. So then we heard that Elex 2 is about to come out, you know, and I was replaying Elex and all that kind of stuff. And I made a list. I had my trusty little notebook, and I wrote down many things that I liked about the game and where I can see improvements. And voila, time passes quickly. Here's Elex 2. And I'm also a fan of the Dark Souls series, you know, so Elden Ring came also out. It was actually a 5-day window in which both games got released. But even though Elden Ring was so praised already and so many people were anticipating the game, I was focusing on fucking Elex 2, you know? I didn't care about Elden Ring coming out. I just wanted to play Elex 2. And I think Elden Ring came out first. So I bought Elden Ring just to have it, you know? And then I waited for Elex 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Elex 2 came out first. Well, I played the game, and I also had, you know, Let's Play plans for my channel. Some of you might have watched these horrible first attempts at a playthrough of Elex 2. I said, hey, now before I play the game myself, let's just share it with the community, you know. So I downloaded the game, I started my recording, I activated the microphone, and then I threw myself into that new world. I don't even remember what I said during the playthrough. I think there was a fair share of critique in the 6 episodes or 5 episodes that I uploaded. But because I was playing the game in advance, I came to a point where I couldn't progress the main storyline. And immediately I got thrown back to a situation that I had during Night of the Raven. I mean, granted, it's a fascinating game and they fixed it very quickly back in the day. I just had this very weird feeling creeping up on me, and I immediately lost all interest in waiting for a hotfix to play it any further. That's the reason why I abandoned the playthrough back in the day. But it wasn't just that reason. I mean, come on. If the game would have been really good, if I was really invested in playing it, I would have waited for the hotfix so I can continue the main storyline and go on with my business. But there were other things that made me very, very sad, you know? And my childlike joy that I had a few weeks before the release, they vanished, and I was demotivated because I saw the quality of the game. And it's been talked about so many times. The animations, the horrible faces, the weird changes in the factions when it comes to the visuals. I was really expecting, you know, that was actually one of the main the main points that I was looking forward to, you know, joining the Berserkers once again because they had cool armor. I like the medieval style of it all. But then the Berserkers kind of relocated to the former Outlaw City, and they became a weird mix of outlaws and Berserkers, at least on a visual level, and I completely disliked that. Completely. I was looking at these pieces of armor and I was like, okay, if that is like the let's say, if that's like the middle armor and the heavy armor looks more like the true Berserker armor that we got to know in Elex 1, I'm okay with that. But no, that design was just scrapped. Another thing that I then recognized was the environmental storytelling. even back in the day with Gothic 1, Gothic 2, Gothic 3, they had phenomenal environmental storytelling. You know, when there is a skeleton on the ground and a little health potion, and a sword is lying next to the fallen warrior in a cave with a, let's say, I don't know, a shadow beast or whatever. You're like, hey, he tried to fight that beast, but perished, you know? Tried to chuck down a potion, but failed miserably, and now that poor bastard is lying here in the dirt. And Piranha Bytes did a very good job at that. And I like to experience these kind of things, this environmental storytelling. And right after I stopped playing Elex 2, I went back to Elex 1 and checked my notes that I made back in the day. And I had written down exactly that, you know, environmental storytelling that I came across in Elex 1. It was very, very rich. You had a lot of, because of the more modern nature of the setting, you had a lot of memos, so a lot of spoken word, lore bits and pieces. And they told a cool story. I, at times, was wishing for, hey, please leave that environmental storytelling and give us some more quests, you know? But nevertheless, I really like that kind of storytelling. If I look back right now very spontaneously, I remember the Valley of the Damned, which was located next to the Berserker fortress, and it was there where the members of the Berserkers got exiled and sent to. It was this valley where they had to cut down wood or whatever to survive in the wilderness and prove their worth so they can come back into the city of Goliath once more. And there was a cool little storyline of two berserkers with an age difference. There was an older berserker and a younger berserker, and obviously the older berserker is the wise old man who tackles problems by thinking about them, and yet then you have the young hothead, you know, who rushes and wants to fight and is not clearly thinking about the situation at hand. So both of them perished. You see that they got killed in their hideout or whatever. You move a little bit up the coast and you have a similar situation of berserkers who would try to grow one of these world hearts, but they kind of failed. And it's this world heart with toxic gases all around it, and there's also these weird shadow beasts roaming the area. And there is a memo of these guys, there is a diary of these guys detailing the story. And I like that. I like the feeling that you had in Elex 1, that you had different factions battling for dominance, and that you had these side stories of exiled people of Goliath, for example, trying to survive in the forests, trying to regain the trust of their community to get back to Goliath. That was crazy. And again, the list of Elex 1 of environmental storytelling, or one or two quests which are out there, it was pretty long, but it was mainly environmental storytelling. And then I compared it to Elex 2, and again, here's a little disclaimer: I haven't finished Elex 2. I didn't finish it back in the day, and I won't touch that game anytime soon. But just comparing the few impressions that I had from Elex 2, the density of these environmental storytelling devices was significantly decreased. And it was lacking detail. I was talking about, you know, the animations, the faces. I just didn't understand, and I still can't understand why there was need to redo animations, why there was a need of redoing faces. Because I think it is fair to say that the faces, for example, are objectively bad and worse compared to Elex 1. So in my opinion, they should have taken all the things of Elex 1 and they should have improved them instead of downgrading them, right? I mean, was the combat perfect in Elex 1? No, but you could work with it. But the combat in Elex 2 was even more clunky like in Elex 1. This is crazy to think about that. It's really crazy, like the hitboxes, they were completely whack. It's crazy. Then the aerial combat in Elex 2 was, I don't know. I mean, the idea, you know, to fight with your jetpack on and fight against flying creatures, in your head it sounds cool and you begin to visualize, but it was very, very weak. And that is when I come to the point, a very important note actually, that Piranha Bytes over the years never really learned of their mistakes. They never did. How can you go from Gothic 1 being such an open world experience that is just a joy to explore, to, okay, Gothic 3, which was, you know, bigger is not always better, but to be fair, the exploration part of it is a big selling point, to Risen 2, which had these weird, disconnected and fragmented overworlds that you would traverse. It was not a true open world. You know what I'm saying? It felt like a tube level. It's like A to B, and you clear the area and you're done with it, and then the next section is C to D. It felt so non-open world to me. And over the course of Risen, it got just significantly worse. So then Elex 1 comes out, and again, you have hope, you have feelings of, hey, it's getting better, and you play the game, and you're like, okay, it's a good enough game, but with room to improve. But they didn't. And that is the never-ending story of Piranha Bytes not taking critique and analyze it and try to make a better game out of it. I think if you ask most of the people who played Elex 1 and who have played Elex 2, who have an opinion about that game and all that kind of stuff, hey, would you have been okay with Elex 2 reusing the models and the animations, but they expand then in the sequel more in a lore direction? You know, they expand the lore, they expand the quest system, they give you a better and tighter story or whatever. I bet that 90% of those peoples you can ask about exactly this, they would have said, I'm okay with that. I don't need super realistic facial animations in a Piranha Bytes game. It's Eurojank. It's a fucking small studio. How many people are working at that place? How many people? Is it 40? Is it 40 people? I don't have the numbers right now, but if you compare it to a AAA development studio like Rockstar and how many people worked on Red Dead Redemption 2, let me check that real quick. Red Dead 2 development team size. 1,600 people to 2,000 people. Okay, I gotta say, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a great game. It is so freaking detailed. But just to give you a number, you know, where we are moving in right now, 40 people. That is nothing. It's still, if you think about it, it's actually crazy that they can pull off something like that. You know, not in the same league as Red Dead Redemption, GTA, or The Witcher or whatever, but still that they can do a video game that keeps you occupied for 40, 50 hours and you have fun playing it, right? But what I want to say with that is they could have saved time by taking the systems that were already done in Elex 1, implement them in Elex 2, and build the world in another direction. Not necessarily, you know, the area itself, but make it more dense, make the story more defined and all that kind of stuff. So they are resistant to people telling them, hey, we want this and we want that, and maybe you should cut back on this and improve that. They don't want to hear it. They have their head in their up their R's and don't really listen to outside influences. And I don't know whose decision that was. Was it, you know, Björn Pankratz who said, hey, we need new animations, we need new faces? I don't know. Maybe it was another developer. But was it necessary? It was not. Oh my god, I'm rambling on again. I try to get to the point. If we think about a Gothic 4, a proper Gothic 4, I've seen a lot of comments on the internet where they were saying things like, oh man, Piranha Bytes, I wish they would do another Gothic game. And I would have had the same opinion like 5, maybe 4 years ago. But right now, if I think about that, Piranha Bytes touching another Gothic game, I say, hell nah. Hell nah. These guys had every chance to give us a proper, cool role-playing games. They had years of experience. They had years of reviews on the internet, which are very, very easily to access, to analyze these things, make a list, make pros and cons, to then translate it into the game, but they haven't done it. They simply haven't done it. I considered myself as a Piranha Bytes fanboy for a long time, since Gothic 1. But I have to say, they gambled away the name, their brand, what it stood for, what it meant, and they traded it for mediocre video games that never again had an impact like the first 2 games they did. I feel sorry for the people who are about to lose their jobs. I also kind of feel sorry for Björn Pankratz, because I don't think he had ill intentions for the team. I think if you are an artist or you have a creative idea and you really work on it, you know, you're sitting at home in your free time. It's not just that you work on these kind of things when you wake up in the morning and you leave for the work. No, that shit is in your head all the fucking time, without you getting paid for it. You love to do it, but in the end, it was for naught. You know, we now can look back at a story of gradual failings, and I think it is fair to say that it's good that the Gothic IP is in different hands. It is a new studio. They haven't done anything, but still I'm more hopeful than I would be if Piranha Bytes would do another Gothic game. I know it is a great task for the people at hand. I know it's big expectations they need to deal with, because even though the Gothic community is a rather small community if you compare it to, again, things like GTA or Red Dead Redemption, World of Warcraft, it's tiny, but our community is very focused on the first games. We love them because it's a handcrafted quality experience. And I think right now is the moment where we say, hey, let's give the guys at Alchemia a chance to prove their worth. And again, even though we are living in 2023, you know, we've all seen the big fall of the big corporations when we look at Blizzard, even CDPR being a beacon once when they released Witcher 3 among all the crappy studios, and then Cyberpunk came out and they also fell from grace. But now it affected also our little favorite studio. Of course I'm sad, because it's a part of my childhood, part of all our childhood, but hey, maybe my vision for the future, a perfect vision for the future in my opinion, is now that Björn Pankratz is gone and we have developers at Piranha Bytes, if they don't cease to exist, who want to go back to Gothic, hey, I can see something like this. Alchemia is doing the remakes right now. Part 1, Part 2, granted if the first one is successful. I hope they then tackle Gothic 3 and give us a proper conclusion of the story. And hey, how about giving Piranha Bytes the chance to work on a spin-off of the Gothic series? Not the main storyline, but something akin to Chronicles of Myrtana, Archolos. Of course, it's connected to the main story somehow, but you take away the focus from the nameless hero, you take away from Xardus. Maybe there will be characters returning in that experience that they possibly craft then in the future, but give us something new. There is still the Southern Isles, which were never really tackled because Arcania is no Gothic game. And you can also add things without violating the core lore of the Gothic franchise. There is still the unknown lands, which are basically this landmass behind Varand, Myrtana, and Nordmar. There is huge potential. And hey, in the future, if Alchemia is successful, maybe some weird wonder happens and Piranha Bytes once more can work on this franchise they once birthed. This precious gift they gave us. And that would make me cry a little. But not in a bad way. Tears of joy, so to speak. Granted, it's a good experience, but hey, you can take a look at Archolos. It's a devoted team of people, and if you want to create a good product, and if you have a little leeway when it comes to time to develop, I think you can do a great job with that. All you need is a lot of devotion. And I believe in that. Thanks for listening, guys. It was, again, a rather long rambling of mine, but I think talking about this is very important. I think it's time to close that chapter and to put our hopes into PB for now, unless, you know, substantial things change. But it is how it is, and we have to live with, well, or they have to live with the consequences of their doing. Thank you all for listening, for sticking with me. I hope I could, you know, give you my perspective on this. And I think many people of you share this notion of mine, and yeah, I hope we can come together in a few years once more, rejoicing for a new Gothic game under Piranha Bytes with a new studio lead or whatever, and yeah. Stay tuned, there is still stuff coming, I'm working on it. Take a look at my short that I recently released. Do you like that kind of stuff? It's obviously not aimed at veteran players because they know all these little things, but I think for new players it might be helpful. Yeah, thank you. See you next time.